Welcome back to the Yanzhou campaign. Last time we started our counter-offensive against Liu Bei, capturing Xiaopei after a major field battle, capturing a smaller town, Langya, after a surprisingly difficult assault, and then we took Pencheng after auto-resolving away its minor garrison. So that's 3 captures so far. Now it's time for the AI to take a turn. The Zhao clan look like they're setting up for something, although that said, they've looked like they're setting up for something before. More armies appearing on our border, and a couple of armies are now in our territory near Jiying. We'll deal with those guys later. The Liu clan didn't really achieve anything, just moving a few armies around in the north of their territory, and Qingzhou achieved not invading us yet, which is always good, although they do have one army there in our territory marching around suspiciously. We'll just keeping an eye on them. Zhang Liao wanted to adopt a really low quality officer, so I said no. Now we've got some rioting in Pengcheng, as I think it's actually supposed to be pronounced. We need to put our army in the city for this turn at least to prevent it from rebelling. Thought I'd ask the Liu clan for peace, since we have taken a load of their territory really quickly. I thought they might be shocked by that. But not really, as you can see. I decided to sweeten the deal by saying I'll tell you what other territories I have. But no, that wasn't enough to convince them, unfortunately. So the war will continue. I realised I just about had enough movement points to attack this army just outside of Pengcheng before we go back in to suppress the rioters. So here was a small battle. We had a gigantic archer advantage, so I just sat on top of a hill and fired at the enemy. They wisely decided to charge to try and stop us from doing this, but I, just as wisely, ran the spearmen forward to avoid any bad skirmishing disasters. With that, it was just a load of archers left behind their line, so we can charge in with all of our cav from nearby to clear everything out. Within less than a minute, the battle is won, we've got the kills we need to stack wipe the enemy, and that's the end of that. Afterwards I did have a few captives, and when I offered to sell them back to Liu Bei, he actually said no. In a surprising twist, would have thought he would take it. Maybe they don't have any money. Anyway, we were able to get back into the city after that, so our front is secure. That's all we can do against the Liu clan for now, but we still need to deal with the Zhao clan on the other side of our territory. Most importantly, I want to attack those armies that are going towards Jiying. I can take Zhang Liao's force, which is currently stationed at Zhuiyang, and rear attack them here. They're currently facing Wei Shu, who was standing there from his previous battle against Zhu Huang at the end of the last episode. And here we go, we get a battle that looks somewhat favourable. The enemy army split into 2 groups, which will make it nice and easy for us to attack them. The first group set itself up on a hill in front of Zhang Liao's small army, and I just started walking towards it, with no particular intention of attacking. I just wanted them to keep looking at me, because right behind them there's the rest of my army coming onto the field, so we're setting up here for a pretty major rear attack. It was delayed by me playing around with formations and trying to get the thing where the army moves in formation working, and I think in this case it failed. They actually changed the formation there as I ordered them to move, but whatever. Plus, the enemy started attacking Zhang Liao's force. They sent some horse archers down the hill to fire. I've got archers and crossbowmen, and we really struggled. I think because the enemy are slightly uphill, they slightly outranged my archers, so I had to move forwards a bit before I could start firing, and the crossbowmen had to move really far forwards before they could fire, and they took loads of losses in the process. It was time to hurry up and get that rear attack going. As my men charge in, the troops on the hill charge down towards Zhang Liao, and due to me being distracted by the micro, we get a classic disaster here. Their cav charge right into our archers. My archers don't actually go and do the running away order that I gave them, so we'll keep spamming that until they actually do, and eventually Zhang Liao can charge forwards with his heavy cav and just drive everything away. At the same time, the rear attack is now happening, so just the odd unit here and there just needs to be attacked and surrounded and destroyed by our superior force. However, their second group is now arriving, and the cav from it are catching some of our units here. We need to clear things up and try to form up to receive them, but because there are little fights going on all over the place, we can't really put anything coherent together, and the fight does end up just being lots of small fights all over the place and me trying to micro everything to keep my units in engagements and try to outflank things, etc. But fighting like this usually means you take a fair few losses, because the odd unit here and there might actually be locally outnumbered by the enemy and get taken down because we're not in formation. Eventually, after a long fight of microing, things end successfully. We kill their commander up on the hill, and the remaining units start to rout. I play into the rout phase because we want to totally destroy the enemy. I'm not sure if it's the same rules as in later Total War games, where reinforcement armies need to be completely annihilated manually in order to count as being destroyed, or whether the 85% rule applies to all armies across the map. Whatever the case, we get an okay result. The enemy lost 3 times what we did, but I did expect a better result from that battle going into it. Curiously, my theory about arrows being the leading cause of healed casualties seems to work here, because the crossbowmen who got shot to pieces by their horse archers mostly come back from the dead. Not quite sure how that casualties healed thing works, and it never explains it of course, but it does seem that getting shot by arrows doesn't matter all that much. For whatever reason I was feeling generous and went for a ransom, and the enemy actually accepted it, so they've got a couple of hundred men back at the end there. Probably would have been better to execute them, because we're almost certainly going to end up facing those guys again. I'm going to combine these 2 armies together, and now this will be my force defending this part of the border. Wanted to put a fort down here, but I think you can't put forts too close to watchtowers, so we'll just have to stand here for now. Let's see then what the Cao clan have in store for us this turn. They're gathering a big army near Chao there, but it's not moving out, at least not right now. They are attacking us with a tiny army that's rushing towards Zhuiyang. Not sure what the plan for those guys is. As for the Liu clan, we see a diplomat going over into Cao territory. They might be trying to organise something here, and they might even be allied. I'm not quite sure. I probably should have actually checked that. Zhou Kang's moving up with a decent army towards Langyao, but we've got lots of stuff in the town ready to defend if he wants to attack. I didn't move Zhang Liao's army this turn because I wanted to refit it and bring down new troops trained in the nearby towns and cities to make a decent army ready for a push against Cao on this front. So we just do lots of reorganising, merging units and sending damaged ones away so we can get a nice full stack going. On the Liu front, I realise we've got an opportunity for a siege draw-out at their capital. They've got a few guys hanging around outside Xiapi, inside which is Liu Bei. So first I moved out from Pengcheng with Zhang Ba's army to stand next to the town. My plan was to make the attack with Gao Shun's much bigger army by coming in and standing next to Zhang Ba to attack the army that's just to his east. However, it doesn't go at all to plan, because Gao Shun takes his army in a wide arc around to the east and ends up attacking Xiapi from the north. He's then stuck by its zone of control, so he can't actually get the battle I was looking for started. There will be no siege draw-out here, unless, that is, we can make the enemy attack us while besieging Xiapi, which as you can see I'm going to do since there's not much else to do while we're standing here. Zhang Ba can actually push away the 2 other smaller armies, although only one of them is pushed out of reinforcement range in this case. We can't make an attack this turn, so it doesn't matter. We can set up a second siege and now wait to see how the enemy react to all of this. Meanwhile, we're also going to defeat that small Cao army that came into our territory. No problem there, just sent some trash spears to deal with it. But we did get a new general out of this, because the captain of the spears was so good, he is available for promotion. Notice he has this poison cure ability, which made me think, is there some kind of poisoning system in the game? Not quite sure. We'll continue to ignore it as ever, and there we go, a new general for us to use. We'll go back to Zhuiyang and continue watching for more attacks. Here we go then, in the Cao turn, a big army actually attacks Zhuiyang, so looks like something starting here. We've got forces available to the north and south, so we should be able to react to that, and no other big movements come from the Cao clan, so we're going to be free to do so. As for the Liu clan, they're going to react to our attack on their capital. Huang Zhong comes up from the south, Captain Huang Zhong that is, probably not the actual historical general, if you happen to know who that is, and he attacks Zhang Ba. That's not a very good situation because our main force can't reinforce, and Liu Bei is coming out of the town to help, despite the fact that the town is technically under siege from our other army. It doesn't work like it does in later games where besieged forces can't reinforce unless it's against the guys besieging them. I guess technically Zhang Ba's army was also besieging them, so that probably confused the system. The eventual result is that Liu Bei pulls in even more units and we eventually get this massive battle going. Luckily it's against Gao Shun primarily, so we'll have a good army in front. It's slightly in the enemy's favour, so not an ideal situation. However, the enemy are also split up into many groups, so I was pretty tempted to go ahead and give this one a go, especially because Liu Bei is on the field, so if we happen to be able to take him down, that'll be a nice strike to the enemy. I actually ended up fighting this battle twice for reasons that will soon become apparent. The first time I tried to do it, I wanted to take down Zhou Zhang's army as soon as possible, since it was the main force and I could deploy next to it, getting the fight going quickly. I thought maybe we can rout that army before the other armies really get involved, and then it'll be easy to take down those smaller forces. The game crashed as things got started, so we never got to test that theory. However, for the moments that I saw of it, I felt like it wasn't going to work. I felt like the enemy would arrive soon. So the second time, I decided to deploy in the bottom left corner and attack the slightly smaller main reinforcement army first, thinking it will be easier to take all of these guys out since we're kind of ambushing them on the edge of the map, and then face everything else. They've got another reinforcement army that's about to appear on our left flank, so we need to keep an eye on that. And of course, their original army is going to come up behind us on top of a hill, so we certainly need to end this initial engagement quickly. We start with a classic archer disaster. The archers were not willing to not get cavalry charged, and we lose pretty much a whole unit there. At least Gao Xin can charge forwards with his bodyguards because they're spearmen, and we're easily able to repel those cavalry now. While we're microing things here, the same thing happens again just further down the line. I don't spot it until just after it's happened. With a bit of good old-fashioned desperate order spamming, we can slowly get our archers out of the melee. It's a shame that the default order is walk rather than run, because when you spam orders like that, the unit goes into move slow mode most of the time, and you have to remember to press the run button after the last spam, which is a hard bit of micro to deal with, especially amidst all this other stuff happening. You can see our battle line has got messed up because some of our units charged out to chase enemies. At least the chaos does give us one opportunity. We can send heavy cav down our right to attack a big crescent of now undefended archers and start clearing them out. That's all good stuff, and it goes pretty well. However, the enemy's main army is starting to appear behind us now, so we're running out of time rapidly. We did kind of destroy this first reinforcement army. Their infantry was defeated just by virtue of the fact that we had a bit more infantry than them in the area and could push them back. So we have cleared stuff out, and the archers started routing once the heavy cav got back there, meaning things went to plan. But now everything's spread out all over the place, and we're in no position to receive the attacks from the other armies, which are now coming in before we've got time to get ourselves together. We're fighting uphill against the enemy's main force there. On our original right, whatever's left of our army here, we're trying to run away and get behind the enemy so that we're up on the hill again, but these units aren't all that numerous and they're being pursued, so we can't put too much hope in them actually turning things, especially with the situation down the hill being so chaotic. The enemy are now going to outnumber us. I'm pretty sure I didn't take into account the enemy army doesn't have a unit limit thing with this plan to take down the enemy armies one by one, so like a third or something of my army isn't actually fighting, meaning that slightly enemy favoured balance bar on the campaign map is much worse in reality, and things are going to be harder than I expected them to be. As you can see, that is manifesting in our army just being shattered all over the place, and while we've got some okay fights going on, the enemy have so many units that aren't engaged. Once they actually start fighting, we're going to be in trouble. The hope of taking them all out is fading away, and it was at about this point I thought maybe we should actually get out of here. In particular, I wanted to escape with my officers, because we've got a couple of officers here who are about to get trapped up against the edge of the map. So I thought, let's just sneak all the officers away, that way we're not losing anything that's not irreplaceable, and they successfully escape. As for the rest of our army, or what's left of it, I'm also going to start pulling them out, but we can't really do it for most of our units because they're so heavily engaged and they're not near the edge of the map, but what I can get out, I do. This leaves us with the enemy roaming all over the field. Luckily they're being really inefficient and chasing the odd guy here and there, so they're not really concentrating against what we have left, buying us lots of extra time. However, withdrawing is going to be more difficult than expected, because you can't order the reinforcements to not come onto the field. So as our units leave the field, more guys will just come in, very much undermining the withdrawing idea, and we have to just try and pull them out the second they become controllable. The enemy can stop us from doing this by just having men here at the line to immediately start melees, and in some cases they are able to do this. I also think in retrospect that archer units need to be off skirmish mode to withdraw, because I think when the enemy's nearby it cancels the withdraw order so that they can skirmish instead. That was what I thought was happening anyway. Archers got particularly destroyed attempting to leave, whereas other units had a better time, like these heavy cav who got intercepted just as they came onto the map. They were able to just leave with a few casualties. Here we see some archers getting absolutely annihilated, very little hope of them leaving until finally enough of them die and they can rout, then they'll really try and leave, and maybe we'll have a few survivors. Overall then, the situation is terrible. The game doesn't suit withdrawing very well for a couple of other reasons as well. One being that the captives system means a lot of the enemies that we quote-unquote killed aren't actually killed because we just took them captive, and now because we lose the battle they go back to the enemy. So here, in the final result, it's not good. We lost about 2/3 of our men, and while technically we inflicted about the same amount of damage to the enemy, it's lessened by the fact that we had to give our captives back, and they keep their captives. So overall, a bad fight. It wasn't an absolute disaster, only a close defeat. We've weakened the enemy quite a lot, and one upside to losing battles in Medieval 2 and Rome 1 is that your men just teleport back to safety. So we're not going to be overrun by the enemy's now superior force locally at Xiaopi. We can plan something for revenge later, but it will be much later. We lost so many men that we can't be on the offensive against Liu Bei anymore. Very meanly, it appears that Liu Bei has executed the prisoners they took. It seems he's become quite evil in this day and age, but we're no better, so we can't complain, of course. Here's what remains of our army. It's a bit bigger than it was before because I was recruiting, I think, in both towns. We've now got something substantial, perhaps one army's worth of troops between those two towns, so that's something, but we are going to remain on the defensive and continue preparing for any future antics over there. As for the Cao front, we need to deal with this army that's besieging Juiyang. Juiyang's only a town, the lowest level settlement, so it's going to be easy for them to attack it, and they've already prepared 4 rams, meaning we need to counterattack this turn to avoid potentially losing the settlement. The question was, should I attack with Zhang Liao from the north or with the forces down at Chao to the south, and I eventually went with the Zhang Liao option, just because his army is better, which will make this easier. It does mean though that our defences to the north are now pretty weak, and the Cao clan does have 2 substantial forces at Chenliu there, which might get involved in things while we're away. We'll just have to see. For now, we are going for this. The enemy army isn't especially good, and now that we have reinforcements coming from inside the city, the numbers will be on our side, or at least they would be, if I hadn't deployed in the middle of the map like this. I've given AI control of the reinforcements, so they should be able to show up, but the best terrain was really close to where the enemy deployed, so I wanted to deploy there as well to give us this favourable hill. My archers are in a really weird formation there, as you can see, and just don't ask why it's like that. I was having more trouble with the controls, and we ended up not actually forming a line. That shouldn't matter since we are still going to be just as good at firing at the enemy, and we've still got our hill and numerical advantage when it comes to archers, meaning a great skirmish phase is on the cards. The enemy stand around for a while and actually take quite a few arrows. After we've killed loads of their archers, they do start charging forwards. Now we'll kill a few more of their men and then run away manually. Not going to trust skirmish mode this time after being failed so many times. However, I'm not running away manually quickly enough. I should have started running when the enemy started moving, because it takes a long time to get your orders through, especially when you have to run backwards uphill, which slows your men down. Didn't take that into consideration. So we are going to be losing a whole load of archers in our attempts to avoid the enemy's charge. In particular, Zhang Liao, one of our officers who has archers as his guards, was heavily caught on the right end of our line. I didn't even see it at first because of where I had the camera. I didn't realise it was happening. His unit's getting taken down, so I'm ordering him to try and get out of there while others go to support. Now a nice chaotic fight will get started, as usual. The fight will be in our favour because we do have numerical advantage even without our reinforcements showing up, and we have the hill and we can outmaneuver the enemy, etc. All the usual stuff. But unfortunately some bad news comes through. Zhang Liao was actually taken out. That guy is listed in the campaign menu as one of the important officials of the faction. He's one of our big players when it comes to politics. Not that that really matters for gameplay purposes, but it just means it's a shame to lose him. Zhang Liao is going to take revenge by charging into the enemies that presumably did it. We saw that Zhang Liao's unit was well out of combat when he died, so I had no idea what actually happened to Zhang Liao himself. Presumably he stayed behind while everyone else was retreating, or maybe he was just stun-locked or something. All of that micro has made me mess things up on the left flank. Our cavalry are getting attacked by spears or just aren't doing anything, and generally the battle is a little bit of a disaster, mainly because I still refuse to pause, which you're kind of supposed to do to optimize your micro. You can just pause whenever you like and take stock of things. I like to play things live just for added chaos, as probably demonstrated in all of these battles. We go on to rout the enemy army just because of the advantages I mentioned earlier. We can win in a big chaotic grind. It's just a shame that we had to lose an officer to achieve this. Perhaps if our reinforcements had been more effectively used, then things would have gone a little bit better. They did show up during the rout phase, so they participated in the battle a little bit. So there's the result. We killed loads of enemies, didn't even lose that much on our side. It's just the loss of Zhang Liao that was annoying. In particular, his unit got loads of casualties healed, so his bodyguards are going to all be coming back, but then they'll just disappear because the main man is dead. Got loads of captives after that, and we will want to execute them to actually weaken the Cao clan. And there we have it, that whole army is gone, and the siege of Zhejiang is lifted. We shall now have to prepare for the funeral of Chief Commander of the Cavalry, Zhang Liao, who curiously didn't have a cavalry unit, so maybe he wasn't doing very well in that post, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, that will be all for now, we'll leave it here. Next time we'll be going on the offensive against Cao Cao using Zhang Liao's army here, and pulling a few antics over in Liu clan territory to try and annoy them while we gradually put a new army together over there.